Final update. Part 2. My grandfather kept his promise. He appeared at the door of the house with his usual smile and a hug that made me feel like I was that little boy spending summers with him again. He was a tall man with white hair and an energy that didn't seem to belong to someone his age. My parents and Esteban greeted him with forced smiles, as if they were nervous. I noticed my mother was quieter than usual, and my father couldn't stop looking at his phone. Esteban, for his part, barely greeted my grandfather and stayed in a corner, as if he were annoyed at having to be there. We went to the restaurant Antonio had chosen, one of those elegant places where the waiters treat you like royalty. The food was incredible, and for a moment, I felt special. My grandfather kept asking me how I was, how my job was going, and what my plans were. It was the first time in a long time that someone was genuinely interested in me. My parents and Esteban, however, didn't seem to be enjoying themselves as much. They spoke little, and when they did, it was to make sarcastic comments about me. Another year at the mall, huh? Alexander, Esteban said with a chuckle. How immature. You're still the same as always, my mother added. I tried to ignore them. I didn't want their words to ruin the moment. But then, after dinner, while we were having dessert, my grandfather looked at me with a smile and said something that changed everything. Alexander, tell me, did you like the gift I sent you last year? I was confused. The gift from last year? The only thing I had received was that horrible cake, and my parents had said it was from him. Oh, yes. Thanks for the cake, Grandpa. My parents told me it was from you, I replied, trying to sound grateful. But Antonio's face changed. He frowned as if something didn't add up. A cake? He said, confused. I didn't send you a cake, Alexander. The atmosphere at the table tensed immediately. My parents, who had been quiet until then, started shifting uneasily in their chairs. My mother tried to change the subject, saying something about how delicious the food was, but my grandfather wouldn't let her. One moment. Margarita, what cake? He looked at me and continued, Alexander, didn't you like the car I sent you for your birthday last year? I felt as if the world had stopped. A car? What car? I looked at my grandfather, completely lost. What car? I didn't receive any car, Grandpa. Just the cake that my parents said was from you. At that moment, I saw my mother's face turn pale and my father drop his fork on his plate. Esteban, who always had something to say, was silent, staring at the floor. Antonio turned slowly towards my parents, and his expression was a mixture of confusion and fury. What is going on here? He asked in a voice that sent shivers down my spine. I gave you a car for Alexander, a sports car to be his birthday present. Where is that car? My parents began to stammer. My mother said something about a possible misunderstanding, and my father tried to blame the shipping company, saying, maybe it never arrived. But my grandfather was not stupid. He slammed his hand on the table, making the glasses tremble. You tell me right now what happened to that car, or there will be consequences, he shouted. The restaurant fell silent. The other diners were looking at us, but I didn't care. I was in shock. A car. My grandfather had sent me a sports car, and I hadn't received it. I looked at my parents, waiting for an explanation, but what came next was worse than I could have imagined. Between mumbles and excuses, my mother finally confessed, we sold it, she said almost in a whisper. We needed the money, Antonio. Things were tough. My father interrupted her, trying to justify himself. It was for the good of the family. We couldn't afford to maintain such an expensive car, and Esteban needed things. That's when I lost control. Esteban needed things, I shouted, unable to contain myself. And what about me? I don't matter. Why is it always him? My grandfather said nothing for a moment, just looked at them with a fury I had never seen in him. Then he spoke, and his words were like knives. I can't believe you betrayed my trust. I gave you that car for Alexander, my grandson, the one who has always worked hard, the one who never asks for anything, and you sold it to spend it on clothes, on trips, on things for Esteban. Seriously, my parents tried to apologize, saying they wouldn't do it again, that it was a mistake. Esteban, for the first time, looked scared. But my grandfather didn't want to hear any more. Not one more cent, he said, standing up from the table. It's over. Pay this bill yourselves. Then he looked at me and said, Alexander, let's go. We left the restaurant, and my grandfather took me to his car. As he drove, he told me the whole truth. For years, he had been sending money for me, not just for the house. He transferred the money to my parents because he trusted them. But now he realized they had kept it all. The sports car wasn't the only thing. He had sent money so I could study, so I could have things that would help me get ahead. I realized a long time ago how they treated you, Alexander, he said. The teasing, the way they made you feel less. But this is the last straw. I was in shock, not just because of the car, but because of everything my grandfather had tried to do for me. I felt betrayed but also relieved. Finally, someone saw the truth. Then Antonio looked at me and said, you're not going to stay here with them. Come with me. I live in a country where you will have opportunities. I'll help you start over. I didn't think twice. I accepted. A week later, I was on a plane with my grandfather, heading towards a new life. When I arrived at his house, I was blown away. It was a huge house with a garage full of sports cars. Pick one, he said, smiling. The one they stole from you is gone, but these are yours. Elle chose a bright red car, like something out of a movie. It was more than I had ever dreamed of. With my grandfather's help, I got a job at a major company. It wasn't just any job, it was a well-paying position with opportunities for growth. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was worth something. My grandfather was proud, and so was I. A few months later, my phone started ringing. It was my parents and Esteban. I didn't answer the first call or the second. For weeks, my phone was filled with messages and calls. I ignored them all because, honestly, I didn't want to hear from them. After what they had done, selling the car my grandfather had given me, using the money he sent for me on their own luxuries, mocking me for years, I felt no obligation to answer them. But one night, after a long day at work, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to answer just to see how far their audacity would go. "Alexander, is that you?" My mother said on the other end of the line. Her voice was shaky, almost unrecognizable. It had always had that authoritarian tone, as if I were a nuisance. But now she sounded desperate. "We need to talk to you. Please don't hang up." I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "Things are difficult. Your grandfather cut us off completely. We have no money, Alexander. We're going to be evicted next week if we don't pay the rent. You're our family. You have to help us." I couldn't help it, I let out a dry laugh. "Family." The words sounded ridiculous coming from her mouth. "Family," I said, my tone colder than I expected. "So now I'm family? Where was this family when you were making fun of me? When you sold the car my grandfather sent me to spend on designer clothes and trips for Esteban? Where was this family when you left me alone while you all went on vacation?" My mother tried to interrupt me, but I didn't let her. "No, Margarita, don't give me that now. For years, you treated me like I didn't exist. And now that you're in trouble, you remember me." There was a silence on the other end. Then I heard my father's voice take the phone. "Alexander, don't be ungrateful," he said with that tone of superiority he always used. "We did what we could for you. Everything we did was for the good of the family. How dare you throw things in our face after everything we gave you? That was too much." "Gave me? What did you give me?" I shouted. "A cheap cake that wasn't even from you? Mockery every time I came home tired from work? Or maybe the constant contempt while you gave everything to Esteban? Don't make me laugh, Jamie." Then I heard Esteban muttering something in the background. My mother got back on the phone, her tone shifting to a softer, almost pleading one. "Alexander, please. We're in a desperate situation. Esteban is looking for a job, but it's not easy. We have nothing, and your grandfather won't answer our calls. You have a good job now. We found out you're at a major company. Just a little help, please. We're your family." The word family again. Every time they said it, I felt a mixture of rage and disgust. "You know what?" I said, restraining the urge to scream. "If you need help, ask Esteban. He was the favorite, right? The one who always had everything. Let him get you out of this now." I hung up without waiting for a response. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't just rage, it was a kind of relief, as if I had finally said what I had been holding back for years. Weeks later, my grandfather told me they had been evicted. They were living in a small place, barely surviving. Esteban, who had never worked a day in his life, now had to fend for himself. My parents, who had always believed themselves superior, were in misery. I, on the other hand, was free. I had a good job, an incredible car, and most importantly, I had someone who believed in me. My grandfather Antonio gave me the opportunity my parents never wanted to give me, and for the first time in my life, I felt at peace.